If I might take a moment of personal indulgence, I would also, at this point, ask for those of you, I would like to tell you why Mr. Rique is not here today. He had an accident and a major injury to his shoulder. He's having reconstructive surgery on his shoulder today. So we want to keep him in our thoughts, and those of you who are so inclined, in your prayers for his speedy recovery. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are still awaiting a response from the 7th member of our commission. There has been an appointment, but we have not been in communication with that individual as of this date. It was only in the last few days the appointment was made. So we're proceeding with this, currently with the 6 members who are seated, and Mr. Rique is absent. So anyway, at this time, there's an opportunity to address the commission by employees or others concerning any items that are on the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission?
We're going to be a little while.
Okay. Yes. My name is Leon Buckingham. I live in Lake Arthur, Louisiana, 114 Magnolia Street, in Lake Arthur, Louisiana. I'd like to address the commission in reference to the item number 3, political contributions docket. The majority, with the exception of one of you commissioners, were on the board when the initial complaint was filed. That complaint was heard by Taylor Townsend. T. Taylor Townsend did the investigation and gave a verbal response as to his findings. But as you know, and you've requested numerous times now for a written summary of his investigation and report. A comment was made at the last meeting that because of the new commissioners, they need to be brought up to speed on the facts and the investigation and what's going on. Being that the majority of you weren't here, I've prepared something that with your indulgence, I'd like to hand to each commissioner. May I?
Is that, just 1 second, is that appropriate?
Yeah,
Sure.
And
Okay.
what this is
Yeah, why don't you just hand it? Just wanted to make sure, Mr. Leon, that I wasn't violating any rules before I give you permission to do anything.
I don't want to violate them either.
No, I know you don't, sir. You've never displayed any intent to do that.
Thank you, sir. What that is the top sheet is the revised statutes that is the legislative statutes that prohibit political donations by any state employee. It's RS 33-2504 and RS 33-2507, the penalty phase. Also on the back sheet, you will find a copy of the 5th Circuit Court of Appeal ruling on the very similar instance that happened in Kenner, Louisiana. Mr. Townsend stated that there were no precedents. I'm not an attorney, but the attorneys that have looked at this said that that is a precedent that should be considered in any consideration of this. Also, the state police policy and procedure rules 901 also has a provision in it of any state employee making any political contributions and all of the verbiage that goes with it. As you may or may not know, when we filed a complaint against Troopers Association for improper political donations, there was one of the troopers on there is a retired state trooper, but he was reemployed as a DPS employee. By being reemployed as a DPS employee, he was not under the rules and regulations of this commission, but he was in fact under civil service. The civil service yesterday found him guilty of those violations, and my understanding he's been given 2 weeks off without pay. I've made the argument from the get-go that one of the agencies are going to be wrong. This commission mirrors or mimics the state civil service. This commission is the state civil service for the classified state trooper who has completed the academy. And because of that, I believe that the law is clear and specific that they're in violation. And before you go into your executive session, I wish that y'all would take time to review those documents and see. You have an attorney, and you have two attorneys that can better decipher it than I can. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. And I thank you for your attention.
Just one point, Mr. Diaz. If my memory serves me correctly, Mr. Townsend, if it wasn't said in public, had provided us all with a copy of the Kenner decision that you gave us. I think in public he did mention that there was conflicting decisions from different courts, but I appreciate you bringing it to us, because we are aware of the Kenner decision.
Floyd Falcon, I'd like to let you know that what you just heard from Mr. Millett regarding the former employee of the State Police Commission was not found guilty yesterday. That's absolute falsity. It just goes to show you what the man is willing to do. I represented him. We didn't appear before the commission yesterday. So the idea that he was found guilty is absolute lie.
So let's try to keep the comments more civil.
Well, the action, it's one way or the other. He's either telling the truth or he's not telling the truth, and he's not telling the truth.
Different people might have different interpretations of the same set of facts. I say we will keep this civil, or else we're going to make these comments extremely short.
Just to clarify, I'll take what Mr. Falcon has said with a grain of salt. I talked to the compliance officer yesterday, Ms. Linda Robert, who is the compliance officer for the Department of Civil Service, and they confirmed to me that there was a settlement reached yesterday between Mr. Falcon, Deuce Rando, and the commission. And in that settlement, I think the penalty for that settlement was 2 weeks without pay. So guilty, settlement, so I may have improperly used guilty, but it was a settlement reached.
Does that, Mr. Falcon, more accurately state the situation?
There was a settlement, but it didn't relate to the same, the circumstances were different. Mr. Rando is a classified civil service employee. Not subject to this particular board, but subject to the state civil service board, and there was some allegations, and the matter was resolved by Mr. Rando.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning. I'm Jay O'Quinn, the president of the Louisiana State Troopers Association. I appreciate your time this morning, and I know we have several people that would like to speak, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. First of all, I can appreciate some of the problems this commission has faced with the turnover of commissioners and executive directors and attacks from the media on some of you personally as well as the commission as a whole. That climate has produced some things which I think were unintended, part of which I think we've reached a point where we are beginning to placate and appease rather than honestly assess the issues at hand and how best to deal with them. It's easy to grow weary and take that path of least resistance. I think we all have done that at some point. I know I have. But I'm here this morning on behalf of the 1,000+ members of the Louisiana State Troopers Association. I'm sorry, David, need to introduce yourself. So I've prepared a few remarks here. In the case of the LCA investigation, I think that most of us would agree this should have been put to rest after the Townsend investigation. And seemingly through technicalities, this issue has lingered on and on and on, I think a year and a half or so. So I hope this commission will decide as it did before and put this matter to rest. I hope today. And moving on to the rule changes on the agenda. The rule change, in effect, my perception of it is pointed directly at the LSTA and the Central State Troopers Coalition, which I think we have a representative in the audience today, should she choose to speak. The mission of the Troopers Association, Louisiana State Troopers Association, is to assure a better working environment for our troopers, committed to improving pay and benefits, providing support when needed, and to increasing the quality of life for our members. We strive to improve the public services provided by members to our community, and we donate our time and resources to numerous charities, as well as private individuals that are in need. We can't always do as much as we want, but we always do as much as we can. And to that end, the most recent glaring example of that is when our department was unable to provide troopers level 4 vests, which would protect them against the rifle rounds that killed police officers in Dallas and here in Baton Rouge. We sprang into action almost immediately, and within short order, I think less than a year, we had one of those vests to every active trooper in the department currently. So that's just an example of some of the things that we do. So our primary focus is to make troopers' lives better and to protect them from attacks from wherever they may come. And sometimes in order to do that as an organization, we have to participate in the legislative process, and we have to communicate effectively with government officials. The proposed rule change takes those opportunities away from us and renders us ineffective. It essentially dissolves our organization, or at least a huge portion of it, and prevents us from defending troopers' benefits and rights, as well as prevents us from pursuing new ones. Respectfully to this commission and to whoever's in the audience or outside of these walls, I must question the motive behind such a rule when it seems to target an organization that represents about 97% of active troopers. Does the rule benefit the many, or does it bend to the will of a very few? I encourage the commission not to let themselves be manipulated by the very few, and to encourage you to do what's right for the many. Until I contacted Director Hanneman about a week or so ago, neither I nor David Young have tried to influence, badger, or otherwise sway anybody on this commission. The only time we've spoken has been within these walls, exchanging pleasantries, with the exception of Sergeant Doss, who is our representative, and we've exchanged information. So, but at this point, we can no longer be idle when rules are proposed that threaten our very existence. And I think this morning you're going to hear overwhelming evidence supporting our right to participate in political activity, and I think you're going to be enlightened as to who we are and what we do. And I think that's something that I'll take on me. We should have maybe educated this commission or its members on what we're all about before this point. But I do look forward to this, any future discussions with this commission, its members, and we just want to do what's right for Louisiana State Troopers. I think that's why we're all here in the first place.
Well, rest assured, this commission will not be manipulated by anyone. We are not going to respond to the climate that is created. We will do what we believe is the appropriate thing under the circumstances.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. David Young. I'm the Executive Director of Louisiana State Troopers Association. I've got 2 or 3 comments that I'm going to share with you this morning. But first of all, let me advise or give you a little insight into the fact that until this board, this particular board of gentlemen who are sitting here this morning, came together, we always had an excellent relationship with the State Police Commission. The charges or the accusations that were made against us at some point made us decide to withdraw, to step back and to keep everything at arm's length so that we could not be accused of any type of collusion or efforts to manipulate what your board said. And I think you will all agree that in the course of the last 2 years, if you've been on this board, you will acknowledge that there has been no effort on the part of the LSTA to influence anyone whatsoever. I hope that's the same with everyone else who has had active roles in this process, but I don't know that that's the case. The LSTA was formed in 1967 being as it's now 2018, it's 51 years that this organization has been in existence, during which time they have had political activity throughout. Now suddenly in 2018, we feel it necessary to change the rule and to, in essence, just do away with the LSTA, because if your rule is passed, there is no more LSTA, because no one can operate under the rule as it's being written. So I ask you to consider that. I ask you to look at the three pieces in blue that are in this rule change, and step back and look at who they're going to affect and how they're going to affect it. And the result is, it may not be next week or next month, but in the short term, there will be we will all have to resign. All those troopers will have to resign from this organization. As far as what we do, I would love to share the history of the LSCA with you. This is not the forum for that. But in the 50-plus years that we've been in existence, we've done a lot of positive things, as Jay referred to, the most recent being the raising $500,000 in private funds to give everyone who is a member of the association, and not only the association, but everyone who is in uniform, a level 4 vest. On top of that, we raised additional money so that the next two classes that come in will be able to have those vests issued to them on the day that they become troopers. In addition to that, we've got plans now to go back and start funding the additional classes going forward, so that every trooper who comes into this job will have a level 4 vest. And God, hope we never need them. I hope they never have to throw them on, because they weigh 25 pounds. And they're very uncomfortable to wear for any length of time. But that being said, they've all got them, and they're all going to be in their uniform, in their units, so that if they have to go to an active shooter situation, they will have the proper tools to defend themselves. There are a number of people here today who also want to voice their opinion or voice their concerns about the fact that the LSCA is going to go away, and that's a fact. And those people are people who have no vested interest whatsoever in seeing the LSCA continue to be. They just have experienced some benefits from the LSCA, and they want to probably tell you what they've experienced and why they're concerned that this organization is going to disappear. With that, I'm going to introduce Paul Toops, who is a recent retiree, as recent as a week ago, who is going to bring forth about 6 or 7 ladies who have all been experienced in various portions of this relationship. So, Paul, you can.
We just asked with a number of people speaking that we do try to keep your mind.
Sure.
Certainly, whatever you need to say, we're not cutting you short on what you need to say.
I'll be quick and allow for them.
You must have got hired when you were like 10.
Tell everybody that. Tell everybody that I was hired at 10 and I retired at 35. They don't believe it. But I have been, I've newly retired, and I was on the job for over 23 and a half years, and I've been a member ever since the LSTA. Whenever I first became a trooper in New Orleans, Troop B, one of my supervisors kind of mentored me and brought me in, and we did a thing called Grant a Wish. And it started and became part of my life, because the way it affects you to watch these children, that you make a difference to their families. I've been president Troop B, I've been president Troop A, and it's been dear to my heart, the LSTA. And so I'm going to bring to some of the people that the Troopers Association has affected them and what we've done for them. Aside from the things that we do, with these rule changes, dismantling this, there should be more negotiation of, hey, these are things that you've done in the past, let's move past those things, let's fix the things. If you don't want it to be a lobbying or those things, negotiate. You buy a house, you don't pay the price that's asked. You don't buy a car at sticker price, you always negotiate something, and I think this is something that needs to be negotiated instead of going in of what the LSP has done, state police has done, is a knee-jerk reaction and everything has got to change completely. It doesn't need to be that way. These are things that need to be talked about, not voted immediately on or presented and negotiate with the board. We've gone years ago and met with Ms. Morgan Covington with St. Jude, the affiliate here, because we were raising money and we wanted to make a difference in the local community. So I'm going to bring her up. I've got some things to pass, which I will bring to you, and let you pass those out. And this is a little presentation from her, and then we'll introduce Ms. Becky Prejean with Dreams Come True, which we also work with.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning. First, I want to thank you for allowing us to speak and hear our stories about the LSTA and Paul and many of the other fine men and women who have helped the St. Jude Affiliate Clinic here in Baton Rouge. So a little history, we are affiliated with St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which is in the business of finding cures and saving children. And we treat children who have cancer and blood disorders. And I cannot do my job without the LSTA, specifically Paul Toops. So I had to put together a presentation. And I heard we're not going to have AV equipment, so I printed them all out for you. So if you please flip through them as I speak. So this is just a very brief overview of our history with them. There was a gap in services before we started working with Paul and LSTA. I do not have a budget. I am a child life specialist, meaning I bring normalcy, distraction, education, support coping to patients, families, siblings, anybody within the family, to help them understand what's going on, why it's going on, and what's the best way we can fight it. So I'm operating without a budget, and here comes Paul Toops, and he says, what can I do? And I said, you want to buy a cake? I said, once, twice a month, we have these no-mo chemo parties. Would you mind purchasing a cake at Winn-Dixie, nothing fancy, and helping us celebrate these milestones, the end of treatment, the end of chemotherapy? So Paul Toops and myself, we said, sure, let's do it. 1 or 2 cakes. Can't be too bad, right? So it started with a couple of troopers. And I mean a couple of troopers. It was small, but it was impactful. You can see here, folks, Michelle King, Jared Sandifer, Mike Talley, of course, Paul. These are children who have gone through treatment. This was back in 2002. We're looking at 6 years here. 2012, sorry. NAC was never my strong suit. We encourage them to sing the no-mo chemo song. And I'm sure if you asked any of these men and women to sing it right now, they could. It goes to the tune of the Oscar Mayer winner song. This was serious business. For each theme, each party, there was a theme. For the one with the crazy wigs, that was the crazy hair theme from Miss Cassidy, a 10-year-old. For the Ninja Turtles theme, that was for Liam, a 4-year-old. As we went through these parties, more and more troopers heard from Paul, from Russell, from Adam. What is this about you going to St. Jude? Isn't that sad? Isn't that depressing? Kids with cancer, bald kids, why would I want to go there and do that? But slowly, more and more came. And they realized it's not just about a bald kid, and it's not sad. It's a milestone. So we had more troopers come. And you can look at these pictures and see we got a couple more kids in there, a couple more folks in there. I remember the story of Terry Tate. If anyone knows Terry Tate's big old guy, right? A linebacker, you think. Mike Talley told me he was scared to come. He was scared to see the kids. But now, if you look at Terry Tate, he's the most comfortable one there. Sorry. We gained another family with the LSTA. These are just some of the no-mo chemo parties they have helped with. These names. I don't want to read them out loud because I probably couldn't get through it. I can barely get through it as is. Because these fine men and women are our family. That's 82. 82 parties in 6 years. 82 children who unfortunately beat cancer. They brought us special visitors. There's Chase talking to Minnie Mouse. There's Terry Tate, Derek,
bunch of guys right there hanging with Mike the Tiger. And there's Chase with the Stormtrooper. Why are you always hanging out with the special characters, Chase? And here's the princesses. Of course, the guys loved when the princesses came. Who doesn't love a good princess? They brought special gifts. Every child receives the LSTA blanket monogrammed with their name. They brought LSU footballs signed by coaches, players, staff, jerseys, baseball, football. The relationship between the St. Jude Clinic and the LSTA grows. It wasn't just about cake anymore. It was about a family and how can we help these families. We started granting wishes and dreams with the help of Miss Becky. They provided financial assistance for patient funerals. Within the past couple of years, they bought us 8 iPads for the clinic. And I'll tell you, that is the most popular toys in the clinic. I think I can retire. They bought us an $8,000 Vecta machine that, unless I could wheel it out here, it's a big old thing, my words don't do it justice. They restocked the playroom with new toys and games because, again, I don't operate on budgets. I have no money. I'm going to tell you the story of Ashley. Ashley was about 18 years old, I think in her freshman year at Louisiana Tech, when she was diagnosed with cancer. So not a child, not an adult, and in between. And that's some of the hardest people to support. So she did not qualify for most wish organizations. Make-A-Wish, their cutoff is 18. You're 19 and a half, sorry, you don't qualify. But Miss Becky, with Dreams Come True, said, let me work with Paul and the LSTA, and let's solve this problem. They granted her a wish, a puppy dog. While she was in treatment for several years, I'm talking 3 to 4 years, her family dog, Gracie, had died. That was the family dog who she loved and adored. Ashley wanted to become a vet. That's why she was at Louisiana Tech. So LSTA donated this puppy dog, which they named Samwise. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, that's where the name comes from. They donated this purebred, fabulous puppy dog, dog supplies, a PetSmart gift card, and a gas card so that Ashley could come home from Louisiana Tech to see her puppy as often as possible. On Monday was the 2-year anniversary that she died. 2 years ago, Ashley died, and her family still has Samwise right by their side. Samwise, as she was dying at home, Samwise was right there by her side in bed with her. This will live on for years. This dog. This is a reminder of Ashley. And with a person without a budget, without resources, I cannot do this. They bought a car for Daniel and his mom. Daniel has a rare, very rare kind of leukemia called JNML. After 2 bone marrow transplants, one of which was from his own mother, he has to return to Memphis, Big St. Jude, the mothership, as we affectionately call it. He has to return about once a month due to the complications from his transplants. They would take the train every single time. When Paul learned that Mom was without a car, without transportation, he partnered up with Roadrunner, and with assistance, they were able to purchase a used car so that they could get to Memphis every single month for treatment. Funeral assistance. Families don't expect to bury their child. They don't think about how are they gonna pay for it. When children die at St. Jude, and the families can't afford it, because if anyone's had to pay for a funeral, it is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Whether you're an adult or a child, it's expensive. And who do I call? LSTA. And they say, give me the name of the funeral home. And they take care of it. These are some of the pictures of the kids that have died. There's Devin. Thank you so much. It was 3 years in January. His family could not afford the funeral. They were scrapping by a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there. I called Paul and he took care of it. And then there's Gracie and Amy. They're cousins. They both died of cancer, different kinds of cancer. Then there's Melvin. Melvin died of cancer. The funeral was so expensive, the family could not pay for it. So the funeral home would not hold the funeral until it was fully paid for. So Melvin's dad decided, I'm going to save some money by going to dig my own child's grave. What did we do at St. Jude? We called Paul. We called the LSTA. We said, you're not going to believe this. This father is digging his son's grave. LSTA took care of it. These are some of the donations that they've done to our clinic. Christmas toys, iPads and cases. That's the definition right there in the middle. It's got this fabulous bubble column. Changes lights, fiber optic cables for children to play with. It's got aromatherapy. It's got a CD player for relaxing music. That's $8,000. Without a budget, I don't have that. When children come to our clinic and they're in pain, they feel bad, you wheel this thing right into their room and they're distracted. They're relaxed. Toys, games, Lego tables. My playroom wouldn't be the same without that. And it's not just for us, little St. Jude. It's for big St. Jude too. How many years have y'all been going to the marathon?
Recently, 2 years, but we've been going to visit for 15 years.
They've been involved in one form or another with Big St. Jude for 15 years. Past 2 years, they've run the marathon. Good for them, because I know I wouldn't do it. I would not run a marathon, as much as I love St. Jude. And that picture on the left, that blue background one, that was made by a patient, Kenley. She passed away in July after fighting cancer for 10 years. The LSTA became her best friends. You've probably seen Kenley on many of the St. Jude commercials. So, that's what they've done for us, to sum it up. I want to say thank you for bringing cake, for bringing toys, for bringing laughter, for bringing hope, for going above and beyond, being there for us, for our patients and our families. Thank you. I also asked our team at the clinic, there's about 20 of us, I said, who wants to say something? Who wants to talk about St. Jude, what they've done for St. Jude? And one of our nurses just said, we just love them. Sums it up, we just love them. I also want to read this note from our social worker. It touches on some of the same items in here, but I think it's important to hear these words. You have a copy of this letter as well. To whom it may concern, my name is Emily Pezance, and I am a social worker at the St. Jude Affiliate Clinic. I have been working here since 2005. Throughout that time, the Louisiana State Troopers Association has had a strong presence in our clinic, whether it's been no chemo parties, or granting wishes, or even paying for funerals. The LSTA has displayed so much love and compassion for the children at our clinic. This group is truly one of a kind. The first time the troopers came to a no chemo party, I remember them saying they were nervous, as they did not know what to expect. However, that nervousness quickly subsided, and they became a part of our very unique family. The troopers will dress up as characters, wear wigs, play with the kids without reservation. It is so heartwarming to see these big, tough troopers put on a Ninja Turtle mask, a dog nose, or wear sparkly wigs and pose like Charlie's Angels. This is not where this special relationship stops, though. The troopers have granted some amazing wishes for our children. One special wish that was granted was for a 3-year-old who is not expected to live. The troopers, along with Dreams Come True, put on a princess party, complete with limousine. I believe you drove it, Paul. Once the little girl got to the party, one of the troopers knelt down and put princess shoes on her feet. It was such a beautiful moment that meant so much to that girl's mother. My favorite wish that was granted was for an older young woman with deep brown eyes who had relapsed several times. During treatment, her beloved dog passed away. The troopers searched and found a perfect purebred puppy for her. The young woman wept with joy when she was presented with this puppy. The puppy was a source of comfort and strength for this woman, and he even stayed with her until the young woman passed away at her home. Her parents now have the dog, and they have said that sometimes when the dog looks at them, they can see their daughter in his deep brown eyes. They have said that this was the puppy that was meant for them, and that their daughter is watching over them through him. The LSTA has also helped in some very difficult times, helping to pay funeral expenses for children whose parents could not afford to do so themselves. They have allowed these families to celebrate the lives of their children without the incredible burden of the cost of a funeral. What a beautiful way to provide relief to a family who has also experienced losing their child. The LSTA has made an incredible impact on the lives of the children in our clinic. Their love for our children knows no bounds. I cannot imagine our clinic without the troopers being involved. They have brought laughter, love, compassion, and caring not only to our children, but to our staff as well. We would not be who we are as a clinic without this amazing group of state troopers. They are family. We would not be complete without their presence. That's all I can say. That's all I can do.
Thank you, Maureen. Ms. Becky is the coordinator for Dreams Come True. I'll let her speak. I've known Ms. Becky for years, actually. Her daughter and I went to high school together and college. And we were at a no chemo party, and she walked in, and we hugged each other. How you been? Her son-in-law and I played football together in high school and college. And so we have a history, so we were catching up, and then she's like, what are you doing here? And I said, we help with the no more chemo parties. Oh, that's great. I said, what are you doing here? And she said, I'm with Dreams Come True. And I'll let her explain from this point.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Becky Frazier. I am the executive director for Dreams Come True. What we do is we grant dreams to children with life-threatening illness, only Louisiana children. Therefore, all the money stays in Louisiana. And so when I met Paul, my God, a huge door opened. And thanks to them, they've introduced me to other state troopers throughout the state. We do have a budget per dream, but sometimes I need that little oof, especially if we know this is their last, if their dream is to go to Disney, if this is their last family trip, they want to swim with the dolphins, they want to have lunch with the princess, it's out of our budget. So I call Paul or Chase, and they give me that little oof, and let me tell you, we take so much for granted in life. We do. I used to, so I can say what I'm saying. but little things mean so much to these families, and it just gives them lasting memories. You have no idea what they go through. I sure didn't until I got involved. And just the little extras that sometimes I need 100, sometimes I need 500, sometimes 1,000. But let me tell you, what it brings to these families, you cannot put a value on it. Talking about funerals, I had a child around Fort Polk. She wanted a library. This kid had over 500 books. So what I do, what Dreams Come True does is buys the building. I contact the state troopers. They complete inside. The wiring, the paneling, where she can, or the kids can walk in. And they just do a phenomenal job. And of course, she passed away. The mom, they still have it, and it's just such an awesome memory. But what it does for these kids, be it a month, a week, a year, it's the lasting memories. I had another child. I went at 10 o'clock on Monday morning to deliver the packet. He was going to Disney. They were going on a train. He was scared to fly. He was so excited. 2:30 that morning, I get a call. He passed away. 3 o'clock, I'm on the phone canceling everything. We don't per se pay for funerals, but if we, in situations like this, and sad to say we've had more than one, if we don't spend the money on the dream, then we do turn around and help pay for the funeral. And of course, again, I call the state troopers and they chime in the difference. I work so well with them. And let me tell you, and like Morgan said, these families aren't saving for this, they're not being prepared for this. And it's so needed. Years ago, we had a dream child in the morgue. When I found out they were not releasing the body, I think the kid was 5 years old, because the family didn't have the money, I was livid. Again, called the state troopers, we got together. I went to that funeral home and I wrote them a check. And then, of course, they released the body and they buried it. But there's just so much out there that people are not aware of. And of course, we don't go out bragging about it. But we need them. Y'all have no idea how much they help. I can't reiterate it's the little things. I had a dream child that wanted to go to Disney, then he changed his mind, he wanted a dog. He's from around the Lafayette area, but my buddies found the dog, and Luke Ryan still has the dog. And Mom sends me pictures, and it's just phenomenal. And I couldn't do a lot for these kids without the state troopers. Y'all, this is for our kids. We do over 80 dreams a year. We cover the state. I go from Texas border to Mississippi border to the Arkansas border. We cover the state. I need the help. And so far, everyone I have worked with, everyone that Paul and Chase has introduced me to has been phenomenal. And their wives getting involved, it becomes a family deal. And these kids are just so needed. I challenge you, I invite you, come along on an interview, come along when we go deliver the packet, see what they get out of this. You have no idea. When they're in the hospital or at treatment, getting their radiation, their chemo, they hold on to these dreams. They look forward to it. I mean, that's all they have, fun. We bring sunshine, brightness into their lives. And then after the dream, they hold on to these memories. And it's just, we need the state troopers. I cannot reiterate over and over how important this is. I'm begging y'all. I am begging y'all because I get close to these families. Yes, I go to the funerals. Yes, I stay in touch with just about every family. My God, if you don't have a heart, is what I'm saying. God has blessed me with healthy kids, grandkids, now great grandkids. and I will do this until God keeps my eyes open. It's so needed. I only brought one portfolio. I will leave it with one. I would be more than happy to make more if y'all each want one. I also say, if you hear of a child that needs, do contact me. Again, we just ran to Louisiana Children. All the money stays in Louisiana. I'm the only full-time paid employee of about 7 years, and I've been doing this 24, 25 years. And when I met Paul, my God, so many doors open. There are so many good people, and I want to continue this. In fact, I'm fixing to call him. I'm not, and I hope I can. I have a family where I need this, just this little oof. So God bless each one of y'all, and thank you for your time.
This is one of the children that we work with, and I'll let her explain her story.
Good morning. My name is Elena Disher, and my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia when she was 2 years old in 2012. Having been a mom of a special needs child, that was the last thing I expected, was for somebody to say, you have cancer for your child. The uncertainty of what comes forward, you know, we were a family that was doing very well, but that meant that I had to move to St. Jude and leave my job. When we, after that first initial 90 days of moving to St. Jude and coming home, it was 2 weeks before Christmas. We put our tree up because I'm trying to have normalcy in my home for my other children, but there was nothing under it. Out of nowhere, here come officers' cars and sirens, and we've got 9 big guys except for Chase. that come walking through my house to present my kids with gifts, but it wasn't just for my daughter, it was for her brothers as well. The other piece that's in play in this case is that our battle was for 3 years, and luckily my daughter is in remission. She's great news. But I've unfortunately had to be the recipient of all 3 of the people at this table at various times. My boys respect what the uniform means. They look up to and want to be troopers. When there's something on the news, injury, anything, they say, is it one of mine? That's how they look at it. My boys are 12 and 9. My daughter's almost 8. Chase is her best friend. Even if she hasn't seen him in a year, he's her best friend. What it does to these kids, we're raising our children in a world of social media where all they see is negativity and negative things. We can teach them right from wrong, and we can teach them what to look up for. But what we can't teach is the things that are instilled in them, and mistakes are going to happen across the board. But if we blame every single mistake to a certain detriment, it will hurt us in the end. I teach my kids to look at those things and make smart decisions, but that doesn't mean they're never going to cross the line. It doesn't mean that my daughter won't ever relapse. But we were able to be the recipient of that Christmas. We've been able to be the recipient to take a trip. Taking that trip as a family, we didn't know if it would be our last vacation as a group or if this would be one of many. But I can tell you that the 3 organizations at this table have meant more to my family, and now having been in remission for so long and kind of back to where we were, they will always have my support, not only financially, but in any organization. My kids wave, whether it's at a parade or at a funeral procession or anything, and they will always have positive things to say. Not because they never make mistakes, but because at the end of the day, this organization means that much and they do that much good. And in today's world, they need all the positive publicity that they can have for the good things and the good hearts that these men do. Thank you for your time.
We have several other parents, but I think we get the point that I don't want to have them come up and tell the story, but I would like to recognize and have them stand, the mothers. And we actually have one of the patients that's here also that we have done a wish for. And I thank you for coming and supporting us as we've done for y'all. You want to say something? Yeah. Oh, well then go right ahead. And I love your hair, by the way.
My name is Rachel Lambert,
troopers came up for the race, the marathon, and they visited the Ronald McDonald House to see all the children from Louisiana, which is like 7 out of 10 at St. Jude. And that was so inspiring to me because I had never met any of them. And it showed me that with everything going on, there were still people that cared and that I wasn't a forgotten cause. And then they told me that they were sending me to Disney World. And I love Disney. Even at my age, I can still sing you every single Disney song ever. And I was just so excited, and I got to go to Universal, and I got to see Harry Potter World, and I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. And it just meant the world to me. And I got like all of these like passes, and it allowed like all the characters like would come up to me and just they treated me, I don't want to say special, but special.
VIP.
Right, VIP. I got a VIP treatment, and I got to skip all the lines. The doctors told me not to go on the big roller coasters, but of course I did. I had to skip all the line. I mean, I wasn't gonna.
Tell them the diagnosis and tell them where you are today.
I was diagnosed in 2012 with anaplastic ependymoma, which is brain cancer. I relapsed in 2016 with the same thing. My original tumor was in my fourth ventricle of the brain and wrapped around the brain stem. And when I relapsed, I had a tumor in the same spot and it metastasized to the right frontal lobe. That was removed. I've had 63 radiation treatments since between 2012 and 2016, and I went through high dose chemotherapy. I had etoposide, cisplatin, cyclophosphamide, and vincristine. Vincristine was by far the worst. It took away my hearing, and it closed my vocal cords onto my windpipe, and we had to actually stop the chemo because if we went any further, it would keep closing, and I wouldn't be able to breathe anymore. And I met the troopers, and knowing that they're still my friends, and I consider them family, and they consider me family, it's just, I feel honored, especially knowing, like, someone else already stated, everything that's going on, knowing that there's still good people and people who care. It means so much to people like me. It's the world. The troopers are doing really good things, and they're making a really big impact. I know that I am not the only patient who adores the troopers and needs this.
I'm gonna brag on Rachel. She now helps us interview kids, and she's getting involved in Dreams Come True, and she's giving back. And so, yeah, we do need the troopers, and Rachel's amazing, amazing.
Thank you, Ms. Beck.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I just hope that it can be tabled and we can negotiate something that's better than getting rid of the Troopers Association. Thank you.
Gentlemen, the last person we're going to ask to speak to you this morning is Floyd Falcon, our attorney. And he will come up here and share with you the memo that he wrote for us regarding precedents. Oh, I'm sorry. Before Floyd comes up. Hey.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Thomas, and I've come here on behalf of the Central State Troopers Coalition. I just want to kind of reiterate a little bit about the associations. We weren't specifically named, but we would be affected in this rule change. Our organization, our organization is a lot about trying to improve the growth of state troopers as well, mostly minority troopers. But a lot of our members are part of Louisiana State Troopers Association as well. We're both members of both organizations. And we try to improve the growth of troopers as far as an individual, personally, as well as professionally. We give a lot of professional standards conferences when they're trying to become promoted on the job. But we also try to interact with the community. We do a lot of different things within the community on the national level. We have a national organization as well. We do things with the Habitat for Community, Habitat for Humanity. We do things for feeding the homeless. So those are just some of the things that we do. But one of the things that we do for the community, we have been having a youth leadership camp for the past 16 years. And we always say that we want to be able to be involved with our youth because that's always a problem. And this is an organization, this is a program that we've been really involved with because this is a free camp that we put on to these youth from the ages of 11 to 13. We're always volunteering for this camp. This camp is a week long that we do for these individuals, and they're usually underprivileged kids that come from throughout the entire state. And when we put this camp on, we're doing all types of things with these, trying to strengthen their leadership ability, their character, things of that, so they can build within their communities and grow into, positive young women and men. So I say that because when they come back we bring these kids back, and when we bring them back, these kids have gone on and become going to college, and they've done positive things within their community. So I say that, I want to reiterate that because we're not only trying to do things just for troopers. We want to make sure that all individuals, troopers, people involved in the community, we have to do everything with the entire state, not just individual person. So this rule change affects, everyone. If we're gonna do something that affects taking the trooper out of being able to do things with the community, with trying to improve their relationship with the community, improving themselves. You can't be able to do things with their retirement, do things with speaking to their legislators, things of that nature, because as an individual, you're not being able to improve yourself as a career, with your career. So this is important too, all around, is what I'm trying to say. So I think that this is something that you really need to consider thinking about before you vote on. Get all aspects of each perspective before you make that change. And that's all I just want to say. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make my presentation now, but frankly, I thought under item 5 of section 4, the public comment regarding chapter 14 rules would occur under new business.
No, it would occur now.
I'm happy to do it now, but
and we did, if that's the same brief that was provided, I think it's been circulated to all of us as well.
Okay, well, that's very good. As Mr. Young said, my name is Floyd Falcon. I'm the attorney for the Troopers Association. I wanted to start off by telling you it's my belief that the Louisiana Constitution provides in two separate articles dealing with classified employees very clearly that no rule shall favor or discriminate against an employee because of his membership or non-membership in a private organization. Those rules, the initial rule was part of the Constitution in 1973 when it was adopted as Rule 10, Section 10. When the Constitution was amended to provide for the State Police Commission, that provision was carried forward and exists in Article 10, Section 48. We believe it is very clear. And we believe that the proposed amendments as written are going to discriminate against an employees because of their membership in a public organization, or private organization. I want to give you a little bit of the history. I don't mean to bore you. I appreciate you all intelligent people. I appreciate Mr. Simeon has a great deal of experience in the law, and each of you have some experience. But I want to just make some comments, and I appreciate if you would just bear with me. One of the initial cases dealing with the subject matter encompassing these rules was the Canatella case in 1992, decided by the Fourth Circuit, and an application with writs was made to the Louisiana Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court denied writs, which indicates that they approved of the decision. The Canatella case stands for the proposition that the prohibition against political activity does not extend to the labor organization. Labor organizations are distinct and distinguishable from its members. I've written the brief and I've quoted from the case law, but these are my highlights that I want to emphasize. But I ask you to look at my memorandum and read at least the excerpts in the cases that I've cited. The Canatella case goes on to stand for the proposition that an endorsement by a labor organization is not a personal endorsement of a member. Therefore, when the labor organization would endorse somebody, it's not a personal endorsement by a member. What your rule tries to do is make it a personal endorsement by a member. We believe that, for the reasons I'm going to relate to you as this proceeds, that is totally improper. Mention was made of the Kenner case, and I think Mr. Simeon mentioned where the Kenner case. The Kenner case was decided on a different set of facts than it presented here. It had to do with how a labor organization, in that case, the Kenner police, came to make an endorsement. But I think the most interesting case is the 2017 recent case by the Third Circuit Court of Appeals in Lake Charles, the Lake Charles police officers versus Randy Roach, who's a good friend of mine, who was the mayor for many years over there. Randy was not a champion of labor organizations by any sensitive word, but he was the mayor. He was the mayor of Lake Charles. But the Lake Charles case, the Third Circuit said that the prohibition against endorsing political candidates does not apply to a union or to a labor organization. Y'all want to make it apply to the union or to the labor organization by by killing that labor organization because its members can't be members and be classified civil servants. That's what your rule says. Your proposed rule says. The Lake Charles case, interesting. Now, if you just read the newspapers and don't read law books, you probably heard of the Citizens United case that was decided several years ago by the United States Supreme Court. The Lake Charles decision adopted or made reference to Citizens United, which was the United States Supreme Court case. Stands for the proposition that unions and corporations are entitled to the First Amendment protection of freedom of expression. In other words, a labor organization can express freely its opinions. The Citizens United case, interestingly, specifically said that nonprofits are persons entitled to the protection of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. The LSTA is a nonprofit corporation. It is entitled to freedom of expression. In Davis versus Henry in 1996, the Louisiana Supreme Court said, any doubt regarding public employees' rights to organize was removed with the adoption of Article 10, Section 10 of the Constitution. That's the provision that I alluded to earlier that says no rule that the commission cannot pass a rule that either favors or discriminates an employee because of membership or non-membership. The Davis decision further acknowledged the right for employees, not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector, to organize, to form an organization, and to advocate for its members. There's a couple of Attorney General's opinions that I've cited for you. In the Attorney General's opinion, it says the endorsement of a candidate by a labor organization is not proscribed by any law. Well, y'all want to make a law, or in this case a rule, that would proscribe against that. I don't think you can do that. The Attorney General's permission say that an endorsement by a labor opinions say that an endorsement by a labor organization is not a personal endorsement of the members, but rather an endorsement by the organization. And that statements made in meetings of a private organization are private. They don't have any, they're not violative of the right, the prohibition against political activity. Let's talk about the association, your right to be in an association, a private organization. In Buckley versus Vallejo, the United States Supreme Court in 1976 says, the First Amendment protects political associations as well as political expression. The First Amendment is not just freedom of speech, it's freedom of association. The Supreme Court in 1979 in Smith versus Arkansas highway employees said it's clear the First Amendment protects employees' rights to advocate ideas, to associate with others, and to petition the government for redress. It protects the right of an association to engage in advocacy on behalf of its members. That's what the Louisiana State Troopers Association does. It advocates on behalf of its members. Its members have a right to belong to such an association. These amendments are going to crucify that right and destroy the association. Fifth Circuit, U.S. Fifth Circuit, the circuit that governs Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, this area, and provides us with insight into the federal law, says, in Bodie versus the City of Columbus in 1993, said, the right to join a union or a labor association is protected by the First Amendment. That's the federal court for this area. The Seventh Circuit, in a later case, actually in a prior case, it was of the same opinion. The right to join an association is protected by the First Amendment, freedom of association. You cannot govern who your employees associate with, except in rare circumstances, I guess, if they associated with, and I'm not even sure this, the Communist Party or somebody like that, but they certainly have a right to participate in labor organizations of their choosing. In 2017 cases that came out of federal district courts in Texas that recently cite Bodie and stand for the same proposition, the right to freedom of association. I cite those cases because those cases are governed by the law as announced by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the Court of Appeals that governs this area. One of the interesting cases that I found that I think is most applicable to this situation was a federal district case in Western District of Louisiana, northern part of Louisiana, Lawson versus the City of Monroe. First Amendment protects public employees' rights to associate with labor organizations, recognizes the right of a union to engage in, and this case talked about a union, but the same is true if a labor organization is not a union, recognizes the right of a union to engage in advocacy and petition the government on behalf of its members. So when we have a registered lobbyist who goes to the legislature and talks to legislators about wages, hours, working conditions, conditions of employment for its members, just like the Sheriff's Association does, they have the right to do that. And it's been repetitively approved and announced by the courts, both state and federal. I wanted to give you a little bit more insight insofar as the state police policies and procedures and the state police code of conduct specifically recognize the right of members of its classified employees to be members of private organizations, but more specifically says the Louisiana State Troopers Association and also the Central States Coalition. The Louisiana, the State Civil Service Commission puts out circulars about political activity. I didn't know this. I've learned this since over the last 2 years. But apparently, in speaking with the people over there, they do this recurrently whenever there's a big political cycle or it's election time in the state government. They put out circulars. And their circulars addressing this issue say they acknowledge the right of classified employees to be a member of an organization that endorses political candidates. That's what y'all trying to deny us. So long as, this is a quote from their circular, the primary purpose of the organization is not the support or opposition of candidates, parties, or factions. You have the right to make an endorsement on behalf of an organization, as long as that's not the sole purpose of the organization. I was tearing up listening to these ladies' comments, the primary purpose of the Louisiana State Troopers Association is far from making endorsements. They rarely do it, but they've done it. They have a right to do it. You can't take that right away from them, of the organization. You have no jurisdiction over the organization. I want to conclude by saying that your Section 10, 48.3, again, I'm repeating myself, but it says, no rule shall favor or discriminate against any employee because of his membership or non-membership in a private organization. 2 years ago, the Louisiana State Troopers Association made political endorsements. You pass this rule as written, then no person or any person who remains a member or who remains on the board of this organization is subject to investigation and disciplinary action and termination by this commission because they belong to an organization now that made an endorsement in the past. Well, I tell you, they can make endorsements. They can associate with whom they can have freedom of association under the First Amendment. But irrespective of all of that, the Louisiana Constitution guarantees them that freedom of association, the right to be a member. I remember, I'll say something on a personal basis, in 1971, 72, I was either still in law school or I was just holding the briefcase, just got out of law school and holding the briefcase of a man that was a member of the Louisiana Constitutional Convention that ultimately became constitutional. And he told me, and I'd expressed to him an interest in being involved in representation of organizations and employees in the public sector, not the private sector. He told, on 2 occasions, he told me to come with him to the Constitutional Convention meetings that particular day. The first day was when the Constitutional Convention was considering what became Article 10, Section 8, because before 1973, the employee, now think about how wrong this is, the employee had the burden of proof to prove that they were right in any appeal and that the employer's charges against them was wrong. Fortunately, the framers of the 1973 Constitution made it clear that the employer, not the employee, has the right. The second time Jack Evans told me, you need to come and listen to these arguments today, was when they considered Article 10, what became Article 10. It didn't even have, I guess it didn't have a number then. Article 10, Section 10, which we believe is the answer to this whole issue, and prohibits you from making any rule, or which prohibited the State Civil Service Commission at the time, but 48 now is the same thing, prohibits you from making any rule that favors or discriminates against people who have a membership in a private organization. What happens if you pass this rule, proposed rule, to all of the 1,000 classified employees that are members of the State Troopers Association? We fire them all. We discipline all. We embarrass them all. I don't think the courts are going to prove that. I would plead with you to study the law before you make a decision to do something that we think is unconstitutional and illegal. Thank you.
I might regret saying this, but is there anyone else? All right, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the items on the agenda. First item under Roman number 5 is consideration of January 11, 2018 minutes. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes from January 11, 2018 are approved. Item number 2 is a request from Louisiana State Police for reinstatement of 189.10 hours of sick leave for Master Trooper Richie Stanley per Spc Rule 11.21.1.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The request is approved. In the matter of the investigation of LSTA political contributions, docket number 16211-1, entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters regarding allegations of misconduct. Anybody?
So moved.
Second. Would you take a roll call vote, please, ma'am?
Brian Crawford,
Aye.
Jeffrey Foss, Michael Newstrom, Harold Perry, and Yulia Simeon.
Aye.
Jeffrey Foss,
Yes.
Michael Newstrom,
Yes.
Harold Perry,
Yes.
and Yulia Simeon.
Yes. Okay. As those in attendance know from all of the discussion about this, there was a previous vote by this commission back on July the 14th of 2016 to issue a summary disposition of the matter involving the LSTA political contributions. That's docket number 16-221-1. At that time, there was no written opinion by the commission. The commission is now ready to issue a written opinion. Because of the extreme interest in this particular matter, I will read that opinion at this time. It is styled, and of course the written opinion itself is what will govern. If I make a mistake in my reading of it, obviously it's the opinion is what governs. Ruling on motion for summary disposition. On July 14, 2016, at its regularly scheduled meeting, the State Police Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, on its own motion voted to dismiss the investigation bearing docket number 16-221-1. At the outset, we would note that this dismissal was not based on the decision that the conduct at issue is permissible under the rules applicable to state troopers who allegedly engaged in the conduct. However, for the narrow reasons stated below, specifically that the classified state troopers who voted that the LSTA should endorse a candidate and make political contributions did so when legal counsel advised them that neither their votes nor the actions by the LSTA was prohibited, the Commission finds the matter should be summarily dismissed. There is a footnote that reads, nor does this Commission render any opinions about the propriety of the manner in which the contributions at issue were first paid by the LSTA's executive director, and he was then reimbursed the amounts expended. Louisiana State Board of Ethics has already opined on that issue. Back to the main text. State Police Commission Rule 116.7E authorizes this commission to dispose summarily of an investigation based on any grounds listed in State Police Commission Rule 16.7A. This ruling serves as a written decision of the summary disposition of the investigation. In a letter dated December 13, 2015, Jesse Scott Perry asked his commission for permission to address it at the commission's January 14, 2016 meeting, indicating that the address would concern alleged prohibited activities of current, active, and classified members of state police. Specifically, Mr. Perry cited violation of State Police Commission Rule 14.2A1, 14.2A4, and 14.2A8. And there's a footnote which cites and quotes from Rule 14.2, which I'm not going to read into the record, regarding political endorsement and contributions. And he noted that, in quotations, during the 2015 campaign, numerous candidates received financial contributions, and one major candidate for office received a public political endorsement, close quote. At the January 14, 2016 meeting of the Commission, both Mr. Perry and Mr. Leon Millet addressed the Commission and alleged that the Louisiana State Troopers Association, hereinafter LSTA, was the organization that through its members of current and former state troopers made political contributions and endorsements. They further explained that their complaint was not against the organization, LSTA, rather their complaint was against classified members of state police. Mr. Perry stated that he learned the decision to endorse a political candidate was made over the phone. He further testified that there was an LSTA meeting at Troop I on December 7 that was attended by David Young, Executive Director of LSTA, and counsel for LSTA, Boyd Falcon, in addition to members. Perry opined that during that meeting, Mr. Young stated that political contributions were made in his name through personal check on behalf of LSTA, and he was reimbursed by LSTA Treasurer and President through the use of LSTA check. Mr. Perry alleged that this act was an indirect contribution for financial political play. That was in quotes. Mr. Perry stated that when Mr. Young was asked how it was determined which candidates would be endorsed and the amount of the contribution, Mr. Young replied that he, the President, and the Treasurer made that decision. Mr. Perry also stated that LSTA's legal counsel, Mr. Falcon, provided an explanation as to what happened. That was again in quotations, an explanation of what happened. And he brought up the Canatella case as support for their actions. During that meeting, this commission determined that it would investigate the complaint. An investigation was conducted, and it was determined that the facts were not in dispute. The LSTA endorsed the political candidate, and the Executive Director, David Young, made contributions to political campaigns and was reimbursed by the organization. The LSTA, a nonprofit organization, organized under Section 501 501c5 of the Internal Revenue Code, is an entity separate and apart from its members. Its membership is comprised of commissioned full-time law enforcement officers employed by the Department of Public Safety and Corrections. Office of State Police who are in classified service, and retired law enforcement officers who are not in classified service. Neither the LSTA nor its executive director is subject to State Police Service article or otherwise governed by the rules of this commission, including State Police Commission Rule 4.1. Accordingly, the State Police Commission has no jurisdiction to consider any wrongdoing of either LSTA or its executive director, David Young. Nor does this commission have jurisdiction to consider any wrongdoing of the retired troopers who are members of or officers of LSTA. Of course, this commission does have jurisdiction and the obligation to consider and investigate the conduct by active classified state troopers. With respect to the members and officers of LSTA who are covered by SPC Rule 4.1 and the State Police Service article, the investigation revealed that there was no rule adopted by LSTA that prohibited political activity, and the action taken by the organization through its members or officers was taken after advice from legal counsel. There is, however, a rule, Louisiana State Commission Rule 14.2, which prohibits political activity as defined in that rule by classified troopers. However, there was no allegation that any such trooper made personal political contributions or endorsements, and during the January 14, 2016 State Police Commission meeting, Mr. Falcon addressed the commission and stated that there was no, and this is a quote, there was no contribution that I'm aware of or no contribution that was discussed by an individual. It would be inappropriate for a trooper to make a contribution on his personal behalf to a political candidate, close quote. Mr. Falcon advised the commission that it was his opinion that an individual trooper who votes that the association should make a political contribution or endorse a candidate while acting as a member of an organization is exempt from rules prohibiting a trooper from doing so or as an individual. And that he so advised the members of the executive committee voting to make the endorsement and political contributions. Besides the Canatella and Kenner Police Department decisions concerning this issue, there is a 1999 Attorney General opinion interpreting statutes similar to State Police Service article and rules, which concluded that the endorsement of a political candidate by a union is not prohibited by any law, and the endorsement by a union is not personal endorsement by its spokesman. There's a cite to that Attorney General opinion. A recent Third Circuit decision, Lake Charles Police Officers Association local, and there's a cite to it, considered the Canatella decision and Louisiana Attorney General opinion to be persuasive authority and concluded that an endorsement of a political candidate by a local 830 through its president was not a personal endorsement of that candidate by him. Significantly, in reaching its decision, the Third Circuit cited the United States Supreme Court decision in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, and there's a citation for that opinion, and noted that the Supreme Court concluded that unions, other associations, or both for-profit and non-profit corporations are entitled to First Amendment protections guaranteeing freedom of expression, which included spending money in elections as part of free speech. The Supreme Court stated, speech is an essential mechanism of democracy, for it is the means to hold officials accountable to the people. The right of citizens to inquire, to hear, to speak, and to use information to reach consensus is a precondition to enlightened self-government and necessary means to protect it. Political speech must prevail against the laws that would suppress it, whether by design or inadvertence. Again, that was a quote from Citizen United. And the final quote from Citizen United, laws burdening political speech therefore must be strictly scrutinized. There is a conflict in decisions issued by Louisiana Courts of Appeal, and there are no decisions from the Louisiana Supreme Court or the First Circuit Court of Appeal, the appellate court responsible for reviewing the actions of this commission, that have addressed the specific issue of whether members and officers of an association who vote to have the association make political contributions or endorsements violate rules such as those governing state police, which prohibit them from engaging in political activities as defined under the rule. It is the opinion of the commission that where there is unsettled law and no decision concerning the issue from the controlling appellate court or the Louisiana Supreme Court, and the members of the LSTA relied on advice of counsel, there is no violation of state police service articles or the rules of this commission. For the above reasons, assuming the charges to be true, the charges would not constitute a violation of state police article or the state police commission rules, and as such, the investigation is hereby summarily dismissed. That is the opinion, the written opinion that was previously voted on and will be obviously public record. I wanted to read it because I know there's a lot of interest in this particular matter, and so we wanted to read it. That is separate and apart from the other agenda item that we have to consider, whether or not there might be rule changes in the future going forward to regulate this sort of conduct. But with that, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is chapter. Oh, we said it. Oh, I didn't read that. Okay. I'm sorry. I'd forgotten, legal counsel just advised me, we previously had ruled to set aside the previous decision. So we do need to entertain a motion to vote to summarily dismiss this matter at this time, or to reject that if that's where we're going to go.
So moved.
In second?
I second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Ryan Crawford,
Yes.
Jeffrey Foss,
Yes.
Michael Nordstrom,
Yes.
Howard Perry,
Yes.
and Euless Ingram.
Yes. Thank you. I forgot that we had set it aside. Okay, but as I was saying, that is the ruling on that past behavior. This commission is still charged with the responsibility to review its rules as they currently exist and to make the needed changes where necessary if those changes are appropriate. This commission will not be swayed by any inappropriate influences of the climate, of the circumstances. We will take into consideration at the appropriate time only those actions which are appropriate. But at this point, it is not the time for us to vote on this proposal. There's lots of information for us to consider. So I would entertain a motion to table the consideration of the rule change to Chapter 14 per the General Circular 190.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, any other commission business? Hearing none, we'll go to the director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being brief for my director's report, just 3 items. In tab 5, behind tab 5, you'll see the draft of the promotional examination announcement for 2018. That is set to be distributed by close of business tomorrow, which sets the date and time for the 2018 promotional exam. Currently set for Monday, May 21st, 9 and 2 p.m. Again, to allow for evening shift employees to better attend the afternoon test date. And the makeup exam is scheduled for Friday, May 25th, 2018 in Baton Rouge at 9 a.m. The test materials will be provided, the updated test materials, as well as a updated application form and process for appealing regrade procedures. And we are introducing a new version of the examination, which will require a retest this year. The next item behind that in your binders is just a review of the budgetary expenditures of the commission, as I always provide. And the last item to discuss is our proposed move, physical move of staff offices to this building. There were some logistical issues discovered with the planned build-out in the front part of this building, which made that case impractical. So, in working with the Department of Agriculture and Forestry, they'll look at the available space, and they are going to revisit and relocate a few individuals. They've been very gracious and accommodating and found an alternative location that my determination would actually be better for this commission. It's in closer proximity to this meeting space in the middle part of the building, on the first floor rather than the second. So I believe it would be a favorable move. We're working on the logistics there, and hopefully, again, we can make movement happen sooner rather than later, with the goal of moving in fully before the end of this fiscal year. That concludes the director.
And we're still looking at the issues of audio visual capabilities in this room.
Correct. We have a temporary improvement with the current microphone situation until the new visual improvements can be made. And we're continuing to work with the building to ensure that what our options are with regards to video capture technology. We want to explore all options before we start looking to acquiring outside resources.
Item number 7 on the agenda is opportunity to address commission by employees and others concerning items not discussed, but, I'm sorry. items discussed but not previously listed on the agenda for which prior comment was not received. Don't believe we had any items that were discussed that were not on the agenda. And I see no one standing, so I assume there's agreement on that. So we entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.